welcome to or welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lena and I make college and book related content here on YouTube, and today I will be sharing with you all my February wrap up. In the month of February, I read 6 different books. Unfortunately, 5 of those books were for school. I am a English, literature, and Francophone studies double major, and obviously with English literature there is a lot of reading, and then the French class that I'm taking this semester is a French novel class, so I'm spending almost all of my time reading different books and plays and various other pieces of literature. The book that I read in the month of February was Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, and I'm just going to include Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban as well, even though I read this later on in the month. I am in a Harry Potter / J.K. Rowling class, and so we're moving our way through the series. So I read these 2 for this month. I'm not really going to talk a lot about what the synopsis is or that kind of thing because it's Harry Potter. I feel like everyone knows about those books, but I will say growing up I never really loved Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. It was an okay book for me, but it wasn't really that special. And I wasn't obsessed with it. I think I enjoyed it more this time around. I found it much more interesting and complex than I did before, partly because of the class. And then Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban used to be my favorite Harry Potter book in the series. And the unfortunate news is I don't think it's going to be anymore. I did enjoy this book, but I didn't love it as much as I thought I remembered loving it, and so now I'm maybe this isn't my favorite book, but we shall see. I mean, I've always loved this book for Sirius Black, and it's definitely not my least favorite book, because Sirius is in it and I love him so much, but I don't know if it's my favorite, so stay tuned and we'll figure out if it is eventually when we finish my reread. I've read and reread these books so many times, I honestly can't even count. But it's been a while since I've reread them, probably 5 or 6 years, so this is definitely a nice treat. The third book I read in the month of February was Marsol contre enquête by Camille Daoud. I'm probably saying his name wrong, my apologies. So this book is a French novel, well, not really French, Algerian novel written in French. And it came out in 2013, I believe, and it is a response to Camus' L'Étranger. It is from the perspective of Haroun, and Haroun is the living brother of the deceased Arab in L'Étranger, and he's grappling with what happened to his brother, why his brother never got a name, and why really just how Algeria and Algiers and the Arabs were portrayed in L'Étranger, and that's just really a response to that, and also kind of a commentary on the independence and movement and war. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. After reading this book, I officially demoted L'Étranger down to 2 stars. If you watch my January wrap-up, you'll know that I gave that book 3 stars initially because I felt like maybe I was missing something, or if I reread it, I would enjoy it more. And after reading Marsol contre enquête, I realized that I'm just not going to like L'Étranger simply because there's so many issues with the portrayal of colonialism, with the portrayal of the Arab man who is killed, and just kind of how that is all communicated. And also I just really don't subscribe to Camus' philosophies, I don't think. In learning more about him in class, I wasn't very impressed. So L'Étranger got moved down to 2 stars, and Marsol contre enquête is 3 stars because I think it is a brilliant response to L'Étranger. It does a wonderful job weaving so many passages and moments of L'Étranger and transforming them and putting them into Marsol contre enquête. I also think that the author did a really good job of responding specifically to the issues with portrayal of colonialism and racism, and just really the whole Frenchman issue coming in and just kind of being a jerk. Being said, I had a couple issues with the book. I found it relatively redundant, and the narrator was kind of annoying. I just felt like there were so many points where I kind of felt like we'd already been over this, and it was just I don't know if I need to be reading this. And then my other issue was the sexism and misogyny present in this book was horrifying. Like, it was so bad. And because this book was written in 2013, like, yeah, it was a lot to take on. And I think also, when I was reading this, I was thinking to myself, I was like, maybe this Marsol contre enquête needs another response, like from the alleged sister, or something like that, just because the portrayal of women was just disgusting. Like, honestly, it was horrible, and I was just kind of disappointed with that in the book. The next book that I read in the month of February was The Awakening by Kate Chopin. I read this book for my American literature survey class, and we were reading lots of other like little snippets and excerpts of other things, but we read this book in its entirety. This book follows Edna, who is at the end of the 19th century, turn of the 20th century. She is married and in Louisiana, and she married into this French Creole community, and she's struggling to fit in, and then basically she cheats on her husband and becomes awakened, and kind of what is going to happen out of that is the rest of the book. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. I think this book is a great cultural reference point, and so I wanted to read it, especially just because it helps me understand other references and contextualize the feminist movement during that time period. I was definitely okay with the book at the beginning. I found the writing really interesting. I found the setting really cool. I was really obsessed with the whole French Creole culture aspect that was going on. I found it really interesting to think about just the way that they still use their like French heritage so strongly in the United States. This was definitely present in a book I read last month, which was A Sitting in St. James by Rita Williams Garcia. So it was definitely interesting to compare the two. I think that this book is definitely an honest, unflinching portrayal of Edna and her infidelity. I think it's like does not shy away from her actions, her feelings, how she feels as a wife, a mother, a lover, all of that. It's just right up there and upfront, and even when she doesn't know how she's feeling, it's pretty honest about that as well. My biggest issues with this book is it's obviously a very white, feminist-oriented book. All of the women who are not white are servants or degraded in some way, and I definitely noticed that they are sexualized in a way that Edna and the other white women were not. And I think there's also issues with just the discussions of race in general. My other 2 issues were infidelity is a hard sell for me. It's one of those things in books that I really, really struggle with reading about, because I just like can't move beyond the fact that someone was disloyal and cheated. It's just really hard for me, and I really struggled also with Edna's role as a mother. I obviously understand like she doesn't need to be a mother if she doesn't want to be a mother, but because there were kids involved, it just made me a little uncomfy at times, because it was also just like the dad didn't care either, so then where were the kids left? At grandma's, clearly. And finally, the ending. I don't really know if that should have been the ending. I don't really know if it did Edna justice as a character, or the message just kind of got lost in the ending, I think, and it kind of let down the reader. The book that I read in the month of February was Lemo by Marguerite Duras. This is obviously another French novel. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. It is set in the 1930s Indochine, which is modern-day Vietnam. It was a French colony at the time, so more French colonialism we love. This book basically is pretty autobiographical of Marguerite Duras' life at this time. So she is 15 and a half years old, returning from school in France back to Indochine, or Vietnam, which is where she grew up and where her family lives. She's returning there. There she meets Lemo, or this older man in his late 20s, who becomes her lover and basically finances a lot of things because he's very rich. Again, she's 15 and a half, which Duras is very clear and does not let the reader forget that. And it kind of is just an exploration of that relationship, her growing up after that relationship, and just also like an exploration in her life in general. I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. I can say first and foremost that I love the writing style of this book. Duras' ability to write so lyrically was amazing. I really, really enjoyed the way she constructed her sentences and paragraphs. I found it really beautiful to read and very immersive, which I appreciated. However, because of my specific class context and history, the book just felt icky because essentially when reading this book, if not properly discussed, it romanticizes colonialism, obviously, as well as pedophilia, because she is 15 years old and he is 27, and it's very disturbing to read, especially from the narrator's perspective, which is the young girl, because she essentially has like no knowledge of what she's getting herself into, and it's very disturbing and hard to read. As far as it being Marguerite Duras' story, I obviously support her in telling her truth, sharing her story, but I just think that the way we talked about it in class was extremely disturbing and honestly, like, so gross. Like, I can't. Like, the entire time, basically, my heart was bleeding for this young girl of 15 who is so clearly taken advantage of. And the way that the book is written, it's trying to give her some more autonomy and give her more agency and power, and it seems more like she is in on it, but at the same time you can very much hear this like confused voice of like what exactly she got herself into, because her family is not supportive. The older man is really not a great guy, as clearly is evident by the ending as well. And I just think that the way we read in class was a romantic reading of it, and I don't think that that's helpful for the reading, so I really want to do some more research about a more realistic perspective, or even what Duras said herself. And the last book I read in the month of February was Yellow Wife by Sadika Johnson. Obviously, February is Black History Month, and I had so many plans to read so many different books for Black History Month. I always try to do this every year, and this year's no exception, except I was in school. And I clearly am doing a lot of reading that does not allow me to read a lot of books for pleasure. This book, even though it's not very large, took me the entire month to read. So, we love that. It is about Phoebe, who is an enslaved person on a plantation in the South, and she is biracial. She is the daughter of the master of the plantation, but her mother is an enslaved woman, and so she is brought up with certain privileges that she would otherwise not be afforded because of her place, and also because of colorism as well. But the mistress of the plantation despises Phoebe for obvious reasons, and the minute she can, she sells Phoebe, and Phoebe is sent to a prison. What happens with women at this prison is they're often dolled up and then sold as prostitutes or sex slaves. But Phoebe is noticed by the owner of the Lapier jail, and he actually takes her to be his essentially wife. He is a white man running this jail for enslaved persons. And she is forced into a relationship with him, forced to bear his children, forced to have sex with him, and forced to witness the brutalities of the prison. This is a very difficult read for obvious reasons. I chose it because it's historical fiction, and during Black History Month, I wanted to read a history-based book, so this was my choice. I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. The characters in this book were so well crafted and written. They were so rich and deep and complex. The dynamics between different characters was so fascinating to read, and I think the author did a really wonderful job with that. I also think historically the author did so much research. This is such an interesting perspective, and it's also one that I think is not often told or shared, especially when we're learning about the history of slavery in this country. This covers so many different important themes, and colorism, sexism, and racism, as well as many others as well. Phoebe's decisions that she is forced to make on a daily basis broke my heart. It was so difficult to read at times, because she's trying to protect her children, protect herself, protect others that she loves. But at the end of the day, she is still an enslaved woman, and that does not make any difference. She's not free. And so that makes it a really challenging read, but an important read nonetheless. The reason why I'm not giving it 5 out of 5 stars is I found the ending to be extremely disappointing. The ending basically ends with 2 different letters from mother to daughter, and it was just really anticlimactic. I thought it didn't really match the rest of the story very well, and it seemed very abrupt, so I didn't love that, but the rest of the book I was obsessed with. So those are all the books that I read in the month of February. I am planning on reading some more typical feminist text or famous women authors for March, which is National Women's Month or something like that. I don't really know the name. But those are my plans for the month of March. If you have any questions or book recommendations, leave them down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and I will see you all next week.